Hello and a very warm welcome again to Sweet Omagh Town Internet Radio. Anyway, I have been looking around as usual and I found some tips relating to garages in Omagh down through the years. One tip comes to mind, and that is the late Billy Davidson. Do you remember Billy?
Oh Lord, I do indeed. Aiken's Garage, is that right?
Aiken's Garage would have been the last garage he worked in. He started off, Declan, up in John Street. Quigleys had a coach building garage. Do you know where Tipler's is? You know the very point where you leave John Street and go on to Church Street?
Yes.
That
just
point
almost there. At that corner. But
yes,
I know what you mean, yeah.
Many years later then, Dan McCaffrey might have had a garage there before he moved down to the Derry Road. So there was a garage maybe all there for many years. That was Quigleys, and that's where there was coach builders there. Then they moved down to, sounding Calvin Mitchell here, hope he's happy, down to where the near where the county cinema was. Quigleys had a garage then and a coach builders there.
Yes.
So
down there, right?
Yeah, so that's the area. And Billy started off when he was a very young man, as you know, and then served his time to the motor trade. But those type of mechanics and all are sadly, that trade is partly gone as well, because I suppose, you know.
That's right, you know, and when you think of it, you know, I suppose thinking of the town now, to my mind, the only garage, or it's like almost like a garage that has that old appearance is Duncan's down at Campsie.
Yes, that never changed. The Fabrica building never changed, really, right?
Yes,
no, that was,
and you know, the days of the garage and the mechanic, they are sadly gone. You know, if you think of the way that the big car companies have come into Omagh and they open up showrooms and premises on the outskirts of Omagh.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they gone are the days, I think, when somebody could tiddle in with their car and get it fixed.
Okay, you know, years ago when you drove into the garage and the mechanic had his head on another man's car looking at it, and you're sort of coughing, and you had to get his attention, and
that's right. Well, near where I live, there's a little village, and it's the one sure way to attract attention. Just pull into the street, stop, probably make a few loud noises in the car, and then step out and open the bonnet, and then just suddenly all these people appear.
Well,
one sure way to get noticed.
I'll tell you, another way to get noticed is to run out of petrol on a Rolls Royce.
Right. Do you know anybody that has happened?
That happened in my time, yes. I'll tell you what happened was, this is the gospel truth. I went over to a garage at home up the Cookstown Road and got £30 worth of petrol. And you know where you expect the light to go out after maybe £5 or £10? I was driving down the road, the light came on again.
Right.
So that shows you what sort of the fuel consumption the thing was doing. But anyway, a week or 10 days later, it ran out on me on the way back to get some more fuel in it. And I was seen, myself and some poor neighbour with his tongue out, trying to push a 3-ton car up the Cookstown Road to get some more fuel in it.
It's almost armoured, you know, just a big heavy brute of a car, you know. Tell me this, just when we're talking about garages, what do you call the garage above where McDermott's is in Omagh?
That was Neely and Cowan's.
Neely and Cowan's, that's right.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And do you remember the man and his wife who used to work, that they lived at the petrol station? There
was a wee tin house there, remember?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Very, very nice couple.
Aye.
Because a late friend of mine, Stephen McKee, as a young fella, he worked there.
Right.
And
okay.
I remember they were just a very, very nice, gentle couple, you know.
Yes.
And Cowan. I've forgotten that.
That's right. Oh, I mean, when you think of those garages, you had Turney's, and you had, all those sort of family-owned garages that seem to have just passed, like the passing of time, and have now moved on. And those businesses are now owned by you call it sort of like multinationals now, where they've got maybe dozens of garages and different agencies and all. So it's all changed, Declan, right now.
Oh, no, surely. But it was fascinating to listen to Billy talking about the development of the motor trade in Omagh.
Aye.
And also, he mentioned some of the people that would get their cars attended to.
Yes.
And fixed.
I know.
It was an age when not that many people had a car.
I know. And Billy would have knew every car in town, every registration number, who it belonged to, and its past history. And I remember Billy was telling me off mic when we weren't recording. I remember this. He says they were both went to First Omagh, I think, at that time. And Dr. Mitchell would say, whisper to him, he says, "Who owns the red Austin 7, AGI or JI, whatever it was?" When they get a bit bored of the sermons, they reminisce who drove what round Omagh. So, wonderful times when you think of it, Declan, when you look back on that.
Oh, yeah. You know, it was a more innocent time and a different time, and, you know, young people would not perhaps relate to it.
Not at all.
They missed the days of the mechanic in the garage, and, you know, I think of what did Henry Ford say when he started the production line, and somebody asked what colour of car, and he says they can have any colour they want as long as it's black.
Well, so, you see, in those days, I mean, cars, I mean, the mileage of a car, if a car done 25, 30, 40,000 miles, it was considered well done and needed a reboard, the engine redone up, needed all the grease nipples and all done, and different types of services. That technology's gone, and then and you couldn't get parts then. You had to go to somebody like Billy Turney who had a big lathe to get something turned or something made for you. So, you know, it was all different, Declan, you know. When you look back on it.
And you think, looking back, growing up, I do not recall colourful cars. They're either cream or dark green, black, occasionally a white one. I have vague recollection of seeing bubble cars.
Right, okay.
Remember them?
I do. I just thinking about my father. Father had an Austin van, bottle green, I suppose, for want of a better word.
Right,
so, yes. And then the second one was a Navy car, was a Vauxhall Estate. So you're probably right, but funny, something tells me, I remember, was it Ford Zephyrs or Vauxhall Vivas came with two-tone, maybe, you know, with maybe the doors a different colour, or maybe top half and bottom half.
And I think maybe the odd Ford Anglia
yes
was two-tone. But then, do you remember the inside of the car? Do you remember the plush, the soft leather seats? And then when they were replaced with a kind of a vinyl, like you used to dread the traditional Sunday run, when you were packed into the back of the car, taken away to Bundoran for the day.
Great.
And if you were lucky, you got a nice lolly or ice cream, and invariably it fell out of your hands onto the seat, and you were stuck to the vinyl in the sunshine. Happy days.
You must be damaged, Declan. But I remember it very well. I had to tell you. You know, the back of the van to Bundoran on a Sunday, and then you had a sort of a kettle and a primus stove, and at 5 o'clock you were rounded up for your tea. You had homemade egg sandwiches or something like that. What I would give for that again, and to have that vehicle back, because I mean,
dear. Well, the first car my father got, he would have been, I would say he would have been hitting 40, if not in his early 40s, and he got a Hillman Estate, and that was a big brute of a thing, a big rectangular box, and that was the first car he got. That was probably in the early to mid 60s.
Yes.
And then the car he got after that was a Cortina. Remember the Cortinas?
Very well. Now, here's something I could tell you now. I could tell you the registration numbers of my father's first cars, right?
Right.
The first was HZ 8255.
Right.
Second one was 4366JI. The third one was 7294IL. You could do a police check on this if you're stuck. But tell me this, I could not tell. I could not tell you the number. I have a car at the garage, a very expensive car, as you know, and I have it now 10 years, and I could not tell you the registration number of it. That shows you the impact of your childhood can have. I know the first three letters, but what the last digits are, I don't know. Nor do I care. But,
dear. Oh, you know. And then my father got an Avenger, and then a Morris Marina. Do you remember the Morris Marina?
Oh, I do indeed, yes.
With the worst door handles of all time, because they snapped after a while. You kind of pulled them because they're about the size of a cigarette packet. Yes. And they were very brittle. Didn't last at all. And do you remember the Austin Cambridge?
Oh, well, they were, you know, not the likes of us. I'm sure you said one, I'm sure. All the big farmers had them round here because they're a good car for towing trailers.
You would see them with the tails of hay in the back.
Aye. But you know...
in fact, there was a man around here. No, he's long dead. But he had 3 sheepdogs, and I used to meet him on the Cookstown Road, and there he was driving, one sheepdog sitting up in the front seat and the 2 sheepdogs sitting in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
Well trained.
That's
Oh dear.
But
no, a sight that you wouldn't see now at all.
No, but luxury cars, I mean, and to get back to this thing that I have, it's got a solid walnut dash on it, wood,
Right.
and then it's got all the sort of the big Connolly leather seats and things. It's like sitting in your granny's front room, you know, when it goes, that is, and it's a whole different experience. It'll not go faster than 50 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour when it does go, but it's the most beautiful thing to sit in, because it does bring you back the wee slim steering wheel and then the fingertip gear change and all on it as well. So,
Right.
But if I can get a good mechanic to get it to go here, to get it, I haven't had it out for maybe 2 or 3 years. So,
Oh, for goodness sake.
one of the plans now,
dear.
I said if Billy Davidson was about, or someone like him, or the late Jack Turney or something like that, I could certainly go and talk to him about it. But young guys, but go to see a car like this, they don't see points or distributor caps and stuff, and the way this thing goes, and it's temperamental at best, Declan. So, but you'll see me up the road someday. I shall go to your house and I shall blow the horn. And boop, you know I'm here. We'll social distance in the back seat,
I should be able to hit you with a stone.
as you normally do.
What to remind you about? Do you remember the indicators? They were kind of an orange colour,
Aye,
and they would come out at the side of the door.
That's it. We fixed light on it with the wee orange light on it. Yeah, they do very well. Yeah.
To name it a lifetime.
We used to get on Morris Minor. So we had a Morris Minor at one stage, and then it sort of popped out to the left or popped out to the right.
Yes, right.
And, you know, and then you had the dip switch. It was like a big round switch on the floor to dip the lights.
God, I forgot all about that, you know. And the Morris Minor, which I suppose was the British attempt to emulate the Volkswagen.
Yes, indeed.
But you remember then, did anybody around Omagh have like a Morris Minor estate, and they had wood?
Oh,
almost like that station wagon, American style.
They were called a Morris Minor Traveller, Mr. Ford.
Oh, a Traveller, right?
A Traveller. That was a Traveller. That was like a beach, wooden sides and stuff. They're very collectible today. Now, if you have one of those, you're certainly worth its weight in gold. Aye. They weren't indeed. Aye. That's the Morris Minor Traveller. And then you had the Morris Minor. Then the old Morris Minors had the split screen, left or right. You sort of like a line down the middle of the old ones as well.
Ah, that's right. Yes.
But no. I mean, and then people had vans. Most people, their families had vans as well. So you know. So it.
And then you got different types of petrol. Remember there was were there not different grades of petrol that you could buy?
There were indeed. I admit people had different ideas about petrol. Some said, it was more efficient than others, and various things. All right, aye, because in that you had 4-star petrol and different types of petrol, different grades. That's right, aye.
Right.
Unleaded, I suppose now would be, or leaded would be the only 2 types you get in this day and age.
That's right. Oh, for goodness sake.
But isn't it strange how it all changes and comes round again?
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And who knows? We're probably in the last maybe decade of using fossil fuel in cars anyway. So
that's it. I think within the next generation, I think they will disappear.
Oh yeah.
That the smell of diesel and petrol will be perhaps a thing of the past. Oh well, but anyway.
Anyway,
I look forward to hearing Billy. I have not heard this in a long time.
Okay, what's your plans for us today, Mr. Ford? Are you going to
garden? I'm on permanent gardening leave. I'm going out and I'm going to cut up wood and I'm going to try and make it beautiful. And I've been in the house since 1988, and I'd say this is the first year that the garden has looked anyway respectable.
Well, I'll have to drive by my little antique car, Mr. Ford.
Yes.
And like the upper 10 and I have the curtains in the back, so I'll be sitting in the back and I'll peep out of my curtains and I'll give you a little wave of my hand to say, well done. The labouring class are doing very well.
As you drive along in your Royce Rolls,
right.
People are tugging the forelock
yes.
and bowing as you go past.
And help me to push it as well. On that happy note, take care. See you later. Bye.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Well, the majority of the cars now, Austins were all black and a dark navy, maybe a royal blue or something to call it, dark. But some of them were two-tone as well. Some of them had a lighter colour at the bottom and a dark at the top. Morris's a lot of the Morrises were green and black. They had a curved stripe down the side, actually shaped into the bodywork, and below it was green. They had black mudguards and running boards, green, and then a black top.
What about the interiors?
Well, the interiors were all leather. Exceptionally good interiors. The Austin 7s, that old Austin 7 that I had in 1933, she had air cushions. Air cushions. Oh, it was terrific.
And wood veneer then inside?
No wooden dash. And the bigger ones had that. The bigger cars. Of course, we had those very big cars there and expensive cars. There was Alvises and Talbots. A lot of Alvises and Talbots. And different other makes. All those Bentleys and all around too, you know. But that was all Commander so-and-so and Colonel so-and-so. Colonel Galbraith, he drove a Talbot all the time. He had a chauffeur in his blue uniform and breeches and leggings, peaked cap. The same, you know where Frank Stewart lives on the Hospital Road there, Clonavon, I think they call it. Well, that was the Dickey homestead, and they had an Austin 16, and they had a chauffeur, peaked cap and breeches and leggings and all. And that Austin, and they always put the best tyres on it, Dunlop Forts, and you couldn't have got the tyres off and on. That's how I remember them so well. I was always fixing punctures, and there's an awful job to get the tyres off and on.
Were there any Rolls Royces around Omagh?
The only Rolls Royce that I knew in Omagh at that time was this W. Quigley that I worked for. He had an undertaking business too, and he had a Rolls Royce hearse. That was the only one I've seen around. Occasionally there'd go one through, right enough. But the funny thing about any Rolls Royce that did call to pump for petrol, they would usually have got in about £20 worth of petrol, and they'd have got in about 6 pints of oil. No complaint about using oil at all. And in a cheaper car, a Ford 8 or 10, if it used a pint, there'd be a row about it.
Well, would you tell us again about the different grades of petrol that there were?
Aye, well, we had the Theo multiple pump that we had there at Quigleys. It had 3 number 1 grades. There was a good petrol, an SO high test, SO ethyl, which was like the raspberry colour stuff, and it had Shell. That was high test, ethyl, and Shell. And then the cheaper petrol, the number 3, it had Crown, which was made by Shell, and it had Max, and it had Ethylene, made by Esso. But there was a fella, a traveller for the Max people, Wesley McVitie. He's dead and gone now, poor Wesley, but he used to come along, you see, and he'd slip us a few shillings, he had to keep the pump on the Max. And having no pay, you see, it was a good idea. If you got 2 or 3 shillings at a time, like from him, for selling his petrol, it was very good.
That's commission.
So one morning, Quigley came out, the boss himself, and he says, put that pump on ethylene and keep it on it. He caught on who we were at.
Well, I presume that you could put any of this petrol into
any of those 6 petrols you could put into land. The only thing was with the number 3, it made more inclined to pink. That was the only thing you'd have noticed. You'd have had it showing pinking. Majority of people were using the number 3, you know, because there was number 1 and number 3 actually. There was no number 2. There was one number 1 and number 3, and the 3 was the cheap stuff, and the car would have pinked on it. You know, they had to keep the timing away back to keep it from pinking, you know. But it was a terrible common thing in those days. Cars pinking was a problem.
What do you mean by pinking?
Pinking when you it's actually a detonation in the engine. When you in the engine, when you're flying along a road, no load on, no problem. But when you come to a hill, with a car fairly far advanced in ignition and the cheap petrol in there, the petrol would have ignited before the spark actually took place, and you got a a tinkle, and you just had this tinkle in the engine, and you went up the hill. You see, it wasn't good for it either. You see.
Well, did you have a call-out service then in case of any problems, perhaps like that?
Oh, at all times there always
on a breakdown service.
Aye, well, not so much a breakdown service, but you're always called out in those days. You're always starting cars. Cars were bad starters.
The winter time must have been.
Winter
bad,
time, it's bad, surely. And then there was one year I remember just after the war started. the people are all caught with a big frost. They didn't put antifreeze in those days. They drained the engines. 2 taps, one in the block and one the majority of them drained them. Antifreeze was any antifreeze that was there was bad, and it classes has been expensive too. But this year anyway, they missed out and didn't get them drained. They didn't expect the frost, and they're all busted. And there was about, I'd say there was 10 or 12 cars in the garage. The blocks busted on them.
Mechanics paradise.
But they didn't put new blocks in them. They repaired them.
Right.
They drilled there had been a crack maybe that length in the block, and they would have drilled a hole at the end of the crack, threaded it and tapped it with maybe say a brass rod, and then they'd have cut it off, and then they would have drilled another hole beside it, half into that one, and screwed another and cut it off, and they went along it. They would have kept you at that the whole way along and then when it was finished you wouldn't have cracked it all. You just seen the line. It was a good job right now, but you couldn't afford to do it now. Like we're at it, I'd have been maybe screwing and tapping for 3 days. So you couldn't have any working the car now for 3 days. So you'd have to get rid of it. Or leave the car and run.
Well, you mentioned that the local police had one motor on the road.
They might have had one car just at that time. There was no policemen driving around. The policemen were all around bicycles, all on bicycles.
And was there much call for traffic police in those days?
Not at all. No, there was no such thing as racing after nobody. The cars, there was no speed in them, you know. There was no policeman running after cars like that. But a funny thing happened one time at the beginning of the war. It had been in your father's time. Constable Murdoch, I don't know if you're telling him or not. Well, Murdoch, he was running after taillights and bicycle bells and a real nuisance, just, you know. But there's a fella, Jim Reynolds. He was just having a row one Saturday night with soldiers. It'd just be where the Barrett's shoe shop is there, beside the Alliance in Leicester, just about there. You know, it was McGinn's at that time. But he's having to get a row with him anyway, and Murdoch come along and arrested him. He had took his coat off and was going to face the soldier. He was a fighting man, you know, but and fit to fight too. You know. But anyway, Murdoch arrested him, took him by the arm up to the Melville, you see, and then of course in those days they went a crowd after watching what was going on, you see. I wasn't in the crowd, but I was told about it, but Jim let him take him to the barracks door anyway, and then he just turned him around and just left him on the broad of his back and walked on in. So a bit embarrassing for Murdoch.
Oh, no. Well, what about road accidents in those days? Were there many?
A lot of road accidents.
Would it be more the fault of the pedestrian or the car driver?
Bad drivers, no brakes, bad lights. Oh, those terrible cars bent and damaged.
Well, was it as hard then to get the test as it is now?
There was no test.
You pot luck.
You just test. You just filled in your form. I filled my form in when I was 15 instead I was 17, and got my driving licence for 5 shillings. And away I went driving.
I just hope then that over the years you would acquire the necessary skills.
Oh, you learn to drive
right
around the garage. You could drive alright. Maybe you made him one of the best drivers in the town. You know, even though you didn't done that. But there was one morning. There was another funny thing happened. There was one morning. The police. I was old. My father, he come to work at 7 o'clock in the morning. You see, and I didn't start till 8:15. So I was always at the gate, at the garage, the door, very early. So the storeman, he asked me, would I mind filling the oil for him when I was there so early to save him time when he'd come in, you see. So that is all right. I said, surely. So anyway, I opened the gate and went in, filled the oil, you see. And anyway, this morning, listen, the phone ring, you see. So I goes and answers the phone. Police here. I want to taxi up here immediately. The barracks. I says, you have to wait till the man comes in because there's nobody here to drive the car, only me, and I haven't even got the licence. I didn't want to I had the licence, but didn't want to say for I wouldn't want to get involved with the police. It was a taxi, and you couldn't drive without a special licence, you see. He says, it doesn't matter if you have a licence or not, you get up here with a car immediately. I need a car immediately. There's a man here to go to the T&F. So anyway, away I goes up, anyway, with the car locked up and took the car out, and I was mad to get a drive too, of course. It goes up to the barracks anyway, and these two policemen come out and this man clean mad, him kicking and flinging and going clean mad. So they got him into the back of the car, and they got their legs over the top of his, and they held and worked at him. And I was trembling, and the seat was getting kicked and getting kicked. And arrived anyway at the Tonemanor Hospital, and went up through the gate and stayed up the side of the big building, and we turned in, and just a door halfway up the building. We stopped there, and this man come out, and he had the cap on the back of his head and a wee pair of glasses on the point of his nose, and he had about 4 days beard on him. And the minute this boy seen him, this patient, he says, "John McConkey." He just got out of the car like a lamb and walked in with him, put his arm around him. But I was scared going out.
Well, were you called upon as a taxi service then, because of the access to cars and that?
They had 6 taxis, and they'd done a lot of work for the ministry.
That's in Quigleys?
They had about 6 taxis, and they done work for the ministry. They were pension officers and all that sort of stuff, you know. And then they done weddings and funerals and all that. The hearse, you see. Oh, they done a big run the taxi work.
Were there many taxi firms in Omagh then?
There was Hackett's of John Street and Quigleys, I'm telling you, where I worked, and then there was J&R Pollock's, Bertie Pollock's. That's the radio places there now. Their father, Billy Pollock's father, had a taxi business along with it. They had a hearse too, you see. I think that was all the ones that were in the town that time now. Well, there was another Walter McGahey. You might have heard tell of Walter McGahey. He's well known around the town. He was a bit of a case, you know, and he had taxis one time. But that's them all, I think now. One man that always got the work done to the truck they had was McGrade's of Tatasala. They had a taxi out in the country. John McGrad, he had a taxi, and they had the lorry. Frank had a lorry as well at a shop, you see. Done their work all the time. I was going to tell you there about a car. There was a fella, Billy Farnan, and he was in charge of the taxis. And he was very particular with the cars and who drove them and all this sort of stuff, you see. But anyway, there's this car. She had an easy number to remember. She was JI 6789, an Austin, what they called an Austin Light 12, and she had come in from a man at Fintona, a man called, he was a JP, I think, JJK Johnson was his name, but the car was immaculate. And there was this morning anyway, there was no car left, only this one to go out, and they had no driver. So the fellow Eugene McGrannon, him and me was great friends, but he was very wild. So anyway, they got him into the office anyway, Eugene McGrannon, got him into the office and gave him a real lecture how he used to handle this car and what he used to do and have it back such a time, and so particular what it was a beautiful car, like new, and that was all right. The next morning anyway, he didn't bring in that evening at all. He took her home at night and went to the dance. Got full. And out there, the Loch, what I call the Lochmuck Road, the old Dromore Road and round to the right, and there was a finger post there in the centre of the road. But when the car was brought in the next morning, there was just this big round in the bumper. He rooted that finger post and took it into the field. But that wasn't the end of it. He didn't want it to know that he had done that. They got the car out somewhere or other, and there was barriers on the road, where they could shove these bars across, to block the road if there was an invasion. That's a bit of a nonsense. But anyway, he gets the car out and he comes down and bangs the car into the barrier. Said he skidded, banged the car into the barrier, and she was collected from the barrier, but she had this big round in the told the whole story. And the good guy never was right after it, wrecked her.
Well, then you service lorries as well. You were saying earlier on for C.A. Anderson and other.
C.A. Anderson. I was going to tell you there, just at the beginning of the war, at the beginning where Jack Price got a new Comer truck, Price's Tanabogan, and Charlie Anderson's got a new Austin. The first Austin truck had come out. Austin's had just produced trucks first time just at the beginning of the war, and they got a new 30 Austin. They just had them about 6 months when the army took them over, and they had to go and buy second-hand ones. Compensated them, you know. There was 6 garages in the town. This was in 1938. There was Charlton's wasn't long opened. There was Quigleys, Turney's, and Willis's. And anyway, and then I was looking for a job in the garage, and Charlton's they were interested, but then they were full up. MOC garages on the Dublin Road. That's just where the mission hall is there now or thereabouts. They were full up too. They weren't interested. So we're living down at Lochmuck, and Herbert Alcorn, he says, "Leave it to me. I'll see Willie Quigley for you." So he seen W.T. Quigley and got me a start. So I just left school. I was born and reared in Coal Island, and my father had got a job with the Northern Ireland Road Transport Board, and then we moved up with him, you see. And anyway, I started, and I had to pay a fee of 10 guineas. It was reduced a bit. It was reduced to 7 guineas on account of my father being in the motor business. So I had to pay this fee. I arrived at the garage that Monday morning with my cheque for 7 guineas, and started. I got no pay for 6 months at all.
So you had to pay for your own apprenticeship?
You had to pay that fee. I don't know what it was for, but they charged it. It was just one way of getting a few pound, I think. So anyway, that was all right. I worked the 6 months, and they put me on the petrol pump. I was on the petrol pump for 9 months actually, but they put me on the petrol pump anyway, and I just worked a labouring man's job on the petrol pump for the 9 months. But anyway, come to the end of the 6 months, I got £0.50 a week, but they took half my stamp out of it, which left me with 1 shilling and threepence and my card stamped. So we worked a 6-day week. We worked from 8:15 in the morning to 6 at night. We got no half day. There are no holidays at all that they could keep off. So anyway, then I got this. Then the second 6 months, I got a rise to 3 and 9. And during that period, my mother gave me 10 pence a day for my dinner, and she bought me 2 pair of overalls, 12 and 6 pence a pair, and she washed a pair every week for me at home. She washed them and ironed them at home. And then 3 and 9, it would come to 3 and 9. After that, then Quigley said to me, the storeman was leaving, he says, "Would you help me out and take a job in the store for a while?" So I went to the store for a year, and I got 17 and 6 pence. I thought I was the bank manager. So anyway, I worked in the store for about a year, then back to the garage, and there was a sort of a strike then among the men, and met the boss. We all went and met the boss, and anyway, it turned out that most of them got up to £2. They got up from about 30 shillings up to £2.10. No union, no, just the men decided among themselves. And they were all great men at putting up a great story, but when you went in, I was pushed forward to do the talking. All hung back when they come to that stage, you see. So anyway, we're done the talking anyway, and anyway, hey, Quigley was a long old voice, and gruff old voice. Says, "Well, leave it with me, and I'll see about it." So anyway, that was all right. He called me in later, and he says, "I'm giving you £2.15." He says, "and I'm giving the rest of them £2.10." So I was on my high horse. That was okay. Then we worked on for a long time, a good while. Not for a long time, but maybe another year or so. But the war had come on. Then the Motor Trade Association took charge of the wages, and they said there's a rule made out that any man with 5 years served, he must be paid £5 a week. So there was a meeting of all the garage owners of the 5 garages held to decide would they pay or refuse. So it was a unanimous decision. There was no man in Omagh worth £5. There was no man in Omagh worth £5. Refused to pay. So anyway, it was put then to the Motor Trade Association. They said, right, okay, if you don't abide by the rules, no discount on your cars or no discount on your parts. So they had to pay. So they were just going round the garage looking over your shoulder. They nearly had a pin to jag you to get you going. They couldn't get enough out of you to get the fiver out of you. So that went on then till then the war started, and we got up to about £9-10 a week, and we're doing well. So then the foreman left eventually, and then I was offered. I didn't want the job at all. As a matter of fact, I had applied for a job in the post office garage at this stage, and I had just done an interview and a practical exam and all, and the man was from London, the head man was from London. He says, look, he says, I'm giving you the job, he says, ring me on Thursday, reverse the charge in London, a London number, and tell me you're taking it. So I just got married, and I was going to get there's going to be a bit of reduction in wages, and decided not to take it. Foolish enough. So I rang him and told me he was very disappointed. But anyway, a short time before I should have said, I had no notion of the foreman's job, and Quigley says to me this night, run me up home, Willie. Well, I had no Austin 7 or 33 Austin 7. So he pops in anyway, and he's going up the street, and he'd get habit of doing this. Willie, I want you to stand by to take over. I'm giving you the foreman's job. Oh, no, I says, get a stranger in, you want a stranger in to handle. I couldn't take charge of the men now after walking amongst them so long. And you'll be able to do it all right now, you'll be able to do it all right. So anyway, I got the job, and I got £7.10 a week. And I was going strong. But then when the post office job came up, I went down to £5, and I had to pay digs in Belfast starting off. So I couldn't stand that. After waiting so long for the £7. So then we went on.
When did you get the job?
The job was, I got that job in just at the tail end of the war, just before the beginning of about the middle of 46. It was about mid 46 I got that job.
And did the war make much difference to the car trade in Omagh?
Oh yes, it was. It didn't matter. It didn't matter what sort of a car you had. If you could patch it up, there was a dozen waiting on it. Right. But first of all, when the war, I should have told you, when the war started, the petrol was rationed, and they down to about maybe 4.5 gallon a week. And if you hadn't coupons, which essential coupons, you're a doctor or something like that there, or something important. If you had coupons, you could get tyres and things like that. You see, but then if you hadn't coupons, no tyres. So the people decided, and the petrol then, there is the petrol from 1 threepence halfpenny to 1 forepenny, 1 threepence halfpenny and 1 fourpence halfpenny it was, and they pulled the petrol, and all the petrol companies' lorries were all painted grey, and the petrol was put up to 1.06 a gallon, and the people went clean mad. Wasn't worth it.
Was this like an emergency tax for the war years?
This was the war. This was just to save the petrol for the war effort, you see. Mm-hmm. Cut down, you see. Mm-hmm. And not a man to be running about wasting petrol, they needed it all for the war effort. But they put the cars up anyway, and we went out then, we were going around the whole country putting the cars up in jacks and oiling them and this, that and the other to keep them safe while they were in storage, you see. So there's no time after that till they would have taxed their car for a pint of petrol. They were getting coupons and all from the tractor men, you see. And everybody was getting petrol, black market petrol, you know. So the cars were all back on the road again, and as I say, any car at all, an old car coming in today, they would just send her straight to the dump. But in those days she was taken in and she was repaired and patched and welded and running boards made for her, and everything was, you couldn't get parts, you had to patch everything. So you patched up with second-hand stuff and all that. I remember one time there was a Ford Prefect, and the Ford Prefect had a big long pointy bonnet, you see. The front, this one came in, she was a real bad case, she was rotten. She came in anyway, and we overhauled her and strengthened the chassis and all this sort of stuff. But when she was finished, the chassis was out of line altogether. It was far too high at the front, you see, which meant that when the bonnet come to the back, you could have put your 2 fingers into the back and it was tight at the front, you see. So we got 2 stands, put 2 stands on there, and we got the 2 welders, and we warmed her and we just pulled the front of her down. And that car was sold and went on the road and done for years. And her not worth, she wasn't worth 40 pence.
Well, were cars a status symbol then?
Pardon?
A status symbol?
Oh, well, anybody that had an Austin 12 now was a top-notcher, such as Herbert Johnson of Mountjoy there. And also, it was very useful in another respect, Herbert. When Herbert got his car washed or greased, if he give you half a crown of a tip, and when you're getting no pay, half a crown was very useful. I would have had my mother's tenpence and I would have stuck to it, and I would have went to the Cafe Rex and got a fish supper, tea, bread and butter for 2 and 3pence. 2 and 3.
My goodness. Oh. Well, who were the main car dealers in Omagh?
Well, there was Charlton's were Vauxhall, Bedford. Quigleys were Ford and Austin. Turney's were Hillman. McGrath's were Morris. That was all the agencies in the town. That was all. The Morris, there were I know, and the Billy Sharp on the MOC garages on the Dublin Road, just where the mission hall is there. He had Standard. Standard were a beautiful car, bodywork. Engine was soft, a bit used oil quick, but you just the brakes were they would either have stood you on your head or you had none at all, and you could have spent a fortune on them fixing them, and had perfect brakes. But if you stopped going up the Courthouse Hill, she'd run back. You couldn't get her. They wouldn't work in reverse. and most of them had no lights. Fords had no lights on them. The lights were like candles, and the majority of them had bad brakes too. You know, the terrible of faults in the cars. Today, like the cars, you have good brakes, good lights on them all, no matter what type of car they are. I see the ridiculed scooters there, but like they have good brakes and good lights and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But in those days, you had.
Well, the cars need more servicing then.
Oh, they did, surely. The Ford cars, Ford 8s and 10s, that'll be the Ford Anglia and the Ford Prefect, they would have had about 26 grease nipples on them. And the first service was at 300 mile, change oil at 300 mile, and then 500 mile, and then every 1,000. Change oil every 1,000. But the engines only lasted, the Ford engine in those days, the majority of them only lasted about 20,000 mile. But when I went there first, they were fitting reconditioning. They give you 4.5 hours to fit a reconditioned engine, and the engine cost £12 1 and 9pence. Factory reconditioned engine. Guarantee never was mentioned. Nobody worried about guarantee. There was no mention of a guarantee at all. But you got a reconditioned engine from the factory for £12 1 and 9.
And all the spare parts had to come from across the water?
Well, no, they come from Belfast. There was a firm, J.B. Ferguson's there at that time. They were Hillman, and Harry Ferguson's was Austin, and R.E. Hamilton's was Ford. They had all the dealers in Belfast. But there was a car come in one time, just to show you how touchy they were on the cost of repairs. There was a car come in, a black Morris Minor, a 1934 Morris Minor, and she was GI 6018 was the number of her. I remember her well, and she was sold till the late Billy McKelvey. He would be the father of the tourist people on the Kaplan Road. His father. He was a shop boy in Charlie Anderson at that time. He wasn't married, but he bought the car anyway. I took her out, and the car was crying out for an engine overhaul, you see, but it was titled up for to sell it. So the car went out on a Friday and come back in on a Monday morning, refusing to have it. But he was caught with it. He bought it. So anyway, the car was taken in anyway, and it sat for 2 weeks. And it was talked about and considered every day what they would do with this car and the cost of it all. And you know what the cost of the repair was? £9. And it took them 2 weeks to make up their mind whether to do it or not.
Well, was there any movement across the border with cars?
No. In those days, there was no movement at all. No movement at all across the border. In those days, down south, they were all driving big Ford V8s and big cars. They were driving cars. They were actually American Fords, lorries and all. They were too big for us. I tell a lot of lime lorries from Drumquin. They would have come in, maybe the owner of the lorry and 2 men along with them, and the lorry would have come in anyway to get a back spring in or maybe tyres on or something like that there, and then they'd been in Frank McNeil's and drunk the money while they were getting the stuff done. Then they had the money to pay for it, and the lorry might have sat 3 days with a load of lime on before they got it out.
Right.
But
they were not released until the cash was paid.
No, they couldn't have them out until the cash was paid. I used to be laughing, and then they'd go in again, have another drink, and come in and have another bargain, you see, and they're in and out of the boss's office all day. But
what kind of lorries had?
Fords, mainly Fords.
Mainly Fords.
There's very few. There were very few Bedfords. The Bedfords were there were a few Bedfords around, but not so many. Chartons hadn't got going with the Bedfords at that time. The country got full of Bedfords later. But at that time, they were mainly just old Fords, 30-hundredweight Fords and 2-ton Fords and that sort of stuff. But I was going to tell you there's Archdale of Mountfield, that's the old man, Mountfield Lodge. I think maybe him and Mrs. Archdale never agreed or something, when he was at home, they lived in separate parts of the house or something like that, I don't know, something like that went on anyway. But he was always out in Natal, out in tea plantations or something like that, you see. And the sort of man he was, you come into the garage to me and he'd say, one night I was working overtime, something else. Car stopped so-and-so. The car stopped up the street and so-and-so and so-and-so. What would be the matter? And I'd say it's probably the petrol pump, you see. Have you got one? Oh, yes. Get it on! And you just don't know what you're doing, you had to just run and put it on for him. But anyway, he come home every I think it was every second year he come home for a 6 months paid, and he had a good car. He had a Hillman 20, independent front suspension and all that. Beautiful big car and a real racing car, But anyway, when he'd come to the boat, somebody the car had to be serviced and all ready, you see, and ready to go to the boat to meet him, you see, and somebody was told that you'd be at the boat at such time with this car, you see. So anyway, the car was leaving at lunchtime, you see, and I was in the pump just shortly after I started work, and I was in having a fiddle at the car, you see, during my dinner hour, and there's nobody there, and I was in poking at this and poking at that, and I was examining the cigarette lighter, which you rarely seen in a car, you see, in those days. So anyway, whatever I done the cigarette lighter, it fell to bits in my hand, and I was sweating. So when I got this all gathered up and stuck it all together, you see, and put it back into its place, and got out and closed the door quietly. That was all right. There was a fellow called Tony Hamilton. He was a salesman. He was told to take this car to Belfast. So I went off to my dinner, and when I come back, the car was towed in. He just got as far as the library on the Dublin Road, tearing up past there and spun her on the wet road, and she just knocked a pillar down and into the man's garden, wrecked the car. So anyway, they had to send another car then for Archdale, you see. And we're all kept in that evening, and to put the car upstairs. So we won the car up and had it all finished and all, and the Archdale arrived, you see. They come in with these breeches and long stockings or long socks, or you'd call them, and a raincoat, and a cap. Walked up the garage and up the stairs, seen the car, just walked straight out and spoke to nobody. Not a sound. The car was wrecked.
No, poor Mr. Archdale. What were the roads like in those days?
The roads around the town were okay, but the roads down the country, and I used to go down to see Olive here, and at about a mile of a bad road, and I used to there's so many houses I had to go past, and it took about 3 miles around about to go another road, rattle to the car.
As many's a gay night, from dark till daylight, I spend with people of high renown. But in all their grandeur and heaps to squander, my heart would wander for sweet Omagh town.